What's up, everyone? Nick and Mac from Empty the Benches back with another division preview. It is the one you've all been waiting for. It is the Metropolitan Division. Mac, how are we feeling about this one?
Feeling good. Yeah, I've been kind of waiting for this one the whole time. Love doing all the divisions, but obviously this one has the most personal effect for us as Caps fans. So always excited to go through this, and fun that we get to save the Caps for the last since we're going in alphabetical order. Before we jump in, I want to introduce our guest for this episode. We've got my dad, senior writer Mike Vogel for the Capitals here. Dad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So yeah, same format as always. I think we'll just kind of dive in and like I said, alphabetical. So we'll start with Carolina and we'll save the good stuff for last.
Yeah, absolutely. Hurricanes made a splash in the offseason, obviously getting Nick Ehlers. That was the big move. Mike, I think Mac and I were kind of hoping the Caps might have made a little bit of a play there. I think a lot of Caps Twitter also wanted to see that come to fruition. But just your initial impressions on what that does to kind of an already loaded Hurricanes lineup.
Yeah, that's a piece that they were lacking, kind of a game-breaking top six forward, a guy who can put pucks in the net. Good speed, great skill, and definitely the Caps were interested in him too. His choice to go there. Carolina, they've obviously been right on the cusp of pushing through. They can't get past that second round. Boys at 8 straight years, getting at least that far. I mean, it's something to get in. It's not always easy to get in. You got to admire the consistency, but every year it seems to be something that prevents them from getting in. And to me, they turned over some pieces here. There's no Dmitry Orlov, there's no Brent Burns, but the deal for K'Andre Miller is pretty big too. In addition to what you mentioned, they've also got a young defenseman from Russia, Nikishin, coming in to sort of rotate their stock a little bit. They turn back the clock on you with Burns and Orlov out and 2 younger guys coming in. And K'Andre is a really good top 4 defenseman, I think. So
they love taking New York Rangers defensemen. Don't
yeah,
they?
they do, right?
They do.
They've had a little pipeline going there for a few years. But I think they're still going to be every bit as formidable on the blue line. They've still got Slavin. They've still got good pieces. They'll work one of those guys in with Chatfield, obviously. But yeah, I think they're solid back there. The thing about Carolina is they get players that they know will fit the style that they play. They don't mess around with guys that they don't think can play that high pressure, forechecking in your face, shoot from everywhere kind of game. That is their absolute trademark. So you know what you're going to get with them. And I think, again, it comes down to, is their goaltending good enough? I mean, it probably is, because they spend so much time in the offensive zone. You don't need top echelon goaltending to win it all. I don't think if you're the Carolina Hurricanes and you're on your game throughout the place, that's the hardest part though, because that could take 28 games. Injuries, all kinds of things happen, bad luck, bad bounces, goofy calls. So yeah, I mean, if there's an Achilles heel on the team, it's probably the same thing it's always been. It's in the blue paint. But that said, Freddie Anderson was really good last year when he was healthy and in the playoffs. Kochetkov, who knows? He was a little up and down, but he's definitely talented as well. But they're going to run back that pair, it sounds like, depending on, you hear about them potentially kicking the tires on other guys too. But I guess time will tell on that.
Yeah, the health is the biggest question for me with the goalies. Freddie seems like he's had at least one IR stint every year for the past several years. So you hope he can stay healthy if you're a Canes fan. And then to me, and this is nitpicking, because if this is what I have to say your biggest weakness is, then you got a pretty good team. But for me, the thing I don't like about the Canes is they just don't have a lot of grit and toughness to them. It's just a lot of really skill guys and speed guys, in my opinion. And that's maybe one thing that I would nitpick about them, is there's not a whole lot of nails. But
I think that's a fair assessment too.
Their youth up front is really interesting. We saw Stankoven come in
Yeah.
on that deal last year in the Rantanen fiasco and fit like a glove right away. Him and
Yeah.
Jackson Blake start playing really, really well together. And I know as someone who avidly despises this franchise, that just makes me sick to my stomach. So I hope that doesn't continue this season, but I am quite nervous.
Yeah, those two kids are good. Stankoven and Blake both. And again, that's what good teams do. They move guys out a year or so before the rest of the league sort of catches on to them being on the downside. Better to trade a guy a year too early than a year too late, and they replace those guys with younger players. That's essentially what the Caps have been able to do over the last few years. That sort of kept them going too. But Carolina, they've really they've done a good job to do that with a change in GM during that stretch too, and they've kept moving. Obviously, there's some glitches, right? They get Gensel, they can't keep him. They get Rantanen, they can't keep him. But they've got Ehlers, and their roster is still very formidable. And I mean, they're as good a team as there is in the division for sure, and probably in the conference as well.
Yeah, I'm very worried about where this team finishes in this division. Last year they were second in this division. I think they were like 11 or 12 points behind the Caps. I think they were just shy of 100. But I'm looking at this roster, and I've kind of gone over these as we do these previews, and I'm having a really hard time finding someone on paper that stacks up against this team.
Yeah,
I gotta go no brainer playoff team here, and possibly more than that.
Yeah, they're in
for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. A team that might not be in, let's go ahead and move over to Columbus. So obviously a lot's gone on with this franchise in the last couple of years, both on and off the ice. But, fresh start for the Blue Jackets this season. What are your first impressions just about what they're going to bring to the table?
I think they've got a lot of really good, young, skilled talent up front. They've got a few good defensemen. I worry about their goaltending. I think they're well coached. I think their front office has an idea. I think they're an up and coming team. I don't know. They were a surprise team last year, and I think they could have made the playoffs if not for they had a couple guys that missed a good chunk of time with injuries. Boone Jenner, I don't even think played half the season last year. He's their captain. But man, they really Fantilli's an excellent player. Kent Johnson's an excellent player. The two of those guys typically play together, and they're pretty good together. Marchenko had a fantastic season last year. The only guy in the whole league among forwards with more, who was on the ice for more 5-on-5 goals all season, was Kucherov from Tampa Bay. So that's a real big season for Kirill Marchenko in Columbus, who still, I think, flies under the radar. But they're a really dangerous team off the rush. Even last night in Columbus, you could see they dressed an NHL lineup. They're pretty much down to 25 guys, 24 guys already. And Marchenko was the only regular who wasn't in the lineup last night. And they can hem you in a little bit too if you're not sharp with your breakouts and whatnot. And that definitely put the Caps in a little bit of a ditch potentially in the first period. LT was really good to prevent that from happening. But I think Columbus for me is an up and coming team, and a team that's going to get better, but does have some holes to fill. And I think one of the weaknesses, and I think given the way the salary cap's going to go the next few years, it may not hurt them as much as you may have thought when some of those contracts were signed. Werenski's a great player, one of the top 2 or 3 defensemen in the game for me, and he's on a good deal, but only I think 3 years left. It's the Provorov and the Severson contracts for me are a little onerous potentially because they go into the 2030s. They go into the next decade, and they're not real friendly as far as term or dollars. But again, Columbus has the money to spend. You just hope that. And I have confidence that their front office will figure it out. If they need to move on from those guys, they'll figure out a way to do it because they are going to need some money to keep the Fantillis and the Kent Johnsons and the Marchenkos of the world, Voronkov, those young skilled forwards around and in the system as they try to push up and become, like regular year in and year out playoff contenders.
Yeah, I think I didn't give one for Carolina, but Marchenko would definitely be my, if you can even call it a sleeper pick for fantasy. That's one that you're going to want to target somewhat early on, but should be able to get him at a relatively okay spot in the draft. I think you mentioned the goaltending being probably the biggest weakness. Really surprising to me that we talked about a little bit last episode that they moved on from Tarasov. To me, that's a young goalie that I think has more potential than the two guys they kept around. But I will say Jet Greaves showed some flashes of being a pretty capable guy last year, too. He faced a ton of shots in a game against us and was pretty frustrating to play against at times, too. So maybe there's more than meets the eye.
I think that's what they're counting on, too. I think I don't know what the split's going to be, but I think Greaves is going to get probably on paper right now. I think they're probably thinking 30, 35 starts, given Merzlikins' sort of mercurial performance the last few years. But yeah, trading Tarasov was a surprise to me too. And typically when Florida's sniffing around one of your players, you maybe think twice, especially when the guy who's running Florida used to work.
When you've already traded a Russian goalie to...
And I think Bill Zito knows what he's doing. So, but yeah, it's... they definitely, it does seem like a vote of confidence in Greaves, though, which, is another way to look at it.
I think the Werenski thing is really interesting. Totally agree with you. One of, if not the best defenseman in the NHL year in and year out. I don't think he gets enough credit for that, but definitely as an American, I'm a little bit worried about the health this year, just with the Olympics coming up. You obviously want to see them field the best roster possible, but I do kind of think that the success of this team this year is kind of dependent on how many games he's there for. We've seen what it's like when he's not in the lineup, and it's just it's an irreplaceable.
Yeah, they did a good job of picking up Fabro off waivers last year, and that to the point where they actually, I think, signed him for 4 years, I want to say, at reasonable money. So that was a nice find because he plays with Werenski a good bit. So as long as he's able to keep his arc going, because, Nashville put him on waivers, so you're wondering what they're seeing. And then he comes to Columbus and finds a little bit of success, but, he kind of earned that contract on a half of a season of work. So we'll see how it turns out for him.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about them that I do like is they kind of have the opportunity to play with a little less pressure, play a little more loose, just because there's not that high of an expectation on them. And I think that's kind of what we saw last year, where they kind of outperformed most people's expectations just because no one was really counting them as somebody that would be that high in the standings. So I think, if there's one thing they have going for them, it's that, and that they may be able to surprise some teams. I don't think this will be a team that anyone's circling on their calendar saying we're excited to play this team. I think they'll be a pesky team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they're not going to sneak up on people as much as they did last year either.
I'm going to have to say just outside of playoffs. They just barely missed it last year. I think they're probably maybe in that 5 to 10 point window out of it this year. And that's not necessarily a knock on them. I just think that's what it's like in this division.
Yeah, the competition's tough. I'd say non-playoff team, but it's more a comment on the
yeah, I got them outside too, but mostly only because I think the Rangers will sneak back in, largely because of Mike Sullivan's presence there.
That's a good point. Let's go over to the Devils. This has been a weird one the last couple of years. They've had tons of injury problems. They looked great a couple of years ago, then kind of fell off the face of the earth. So what are we thinking about Jersey this year, guys? Do we see this being a big bounce back year for them?
Yeah, I see them as one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the division. Their goaltending is situated now with Markstrom and Allen under contract for a number of years there. That had been a problem. I think last year for me, their bottom 6 was a little bit of a problem. Like, they have a lot of skill in their top 6, a lot of really good players, and some of those players, Jack Hughes most prominently, missed chunks of time, and that hurt them. And so that led to some of those guys in their bottom six getting pushed up the lineup where they were exposed a little bit. And I think they improved their bottom six a little bit this year with the addition of Connor Brown, number one, who really had a good year with Edmonton last year. Also, there's a couple guys in this division that are coming over from the KHL. One for the Islanders, Shabanov, who could wind up in the top six there, and Arseny Gritsyuk for New Jersey, who's had a really good training camp, has been a real good player in the KHL. They drafted him in 2019, and they're projecting him certainly as a top 9 guy for them this year, and possibly even a top 6 guy as well. So, but they need, more than anything, good health, right? They need Hamilton to play 75 games. They need Jack Hughes to play 75 games. Siegenthaler, all the guys that have missed significant amounts of time over the last few years. And it'd be nice if Luke Hughes maybe takes a step forward. Not that he's not an excellent defenseman, an excellent player already. But at his age, you do still expect to see some growth, and certainly the news of today, that holdout ending and them coming to terms, that's got to lift all boats in New Jersey. That's going to help that entire team's. You get them in there, and hopefully, for me, it's not the same as a guy like Swayman last year. I think goalies need training camp a little more than skaters do. Hopefully, and Luke Hughes, pretty young guy. I think he'll be able to hit the ground running, even though he's probably not going to get a lot of preseason action.
Do we know what's up with Brendan Dillon? I remember he had a pretty scary injury towards the end of last year, and
yeah,
I think he's, as far as I know, he's healthy. But I remember at the time there was some
that looked pretty gnarly. But we were there Sunday afternoon. He was in the lineup and looked pretty sharp. They had a decently NHL lineup, especially up front. But yeah, he was in the lineup and played his usual sturdy game to my eyes anyway.
Yeah, good.
Mac, you love to mention third line test. Looking at these lines on Daily Faceoff now, I know it's just a projection, but we're looking at Palat, Cody Glass, and Connor.
Yeah, it's better than what they had last year too,
line right there, and for sure.
The fourth line should be better as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the depth stuff. I like a guy like Paul Cotter a lot. I think he had some moments last year where he really surprised
since
a lot
Vegas.
of people. And
he plays with snarl.
Before that, when he was in Vegas, yep, he does. He's a good player, so I expect him to be another good depth guy for them this year. Not much to add. I think you did a pretty good job, Dad. I think the defense, like you said, the health, if it's healthy, it's one of the better decors in the league, I think. But
they got a lot of talent back
there. That's an if that you're never going to know about until. Yep.
Fantasy production, I would say bounce back year maybe for Timo Meier. I know I picked that guy up for a little bit last year. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't great, but if he can get back to, a 1.2, 1.3 a night guy, I think that's a great pickup.
Yeah, and you got to think he'll probably be playing with Heishier or, maybe getting some secondary power play time as well. So I think that's an okay target for the Devils for fantasy.
Playoff team?
This is a tough one, and I'm trying to kind of do the math in my head about who else is a yes and who else is a no for me, but I think I'm going to say yes. I just don't see them missing again, not with this team. I think they'll be healthier than they were last year, so I'll say yes.
Yeah, I got them as definite
I'm gonna have to agree
playoff
with
team
yes
for me.
as well.
I think they're in for sure.
Nice. Another team that we've talked about year in and year out that seems to do 1 year in, 1 year out, the New York Islanders. So what in the world is going on here, gentlemen? What is Patrick Waugh going to cook up for us?
Biggest mess there was special teams last year. I think they were 30th or 31st in both of them. So they whacked both assistant coaches and brought in a couple new guys to run those units. And I guess we'll see how that goes. But, new GM, I kind of like uh, you're able to win the lottery and climb, shoot right up to the top and take Matthew Schaefer. So they do that, and then they say, well, you know what, we're going to trade Noah Dobson to Montreal too. So I get a couple of first rounders out of that, plus a fourth line player in Emil Heineman. So um, that's not bad work. The rest of the team's kind of underwhelming to me. They got a bunch of second, third line guys up and down their lineup, really. And they're, to me, they're aging a little bit too. I think they're kind of a sneaky older team, especially up front. And I just, there's just not a lot of bang and not a lot of pow up there. I like a couple of their defensemen, but and obviously they could sneak into the playoffs just in an ordinary kind of boring season just because of their goaltending. I don't think they will, but yeah, they're kind of a meh team to me. They're total middle, one of those, if you rank the NHL from 1 to 32, they're probably late teens, early 20s somewhere.
Yeah, I think. Well, you mentioned goaltending, and Nick and I were talking about this earlier today a little bit. Obviously they've got Sorokin, which we know what his ceiling is. We know he can be, one of the top goaltenders in the league when he's at his healthiest and at his best. They've had Varlamov the last couple of years as a steady Eddie backup when Sorokin struggled with health, but now Varley is kind of also in this limbo of health. I was trying to get some info on it earlier, and there was a quote from Patrick Roy about 5 days ago. They asked him, "Do you expect him to be ready anytime soon?" And his quote was, "No, no." So, Big Save Dave will be the backup, allegedly, Dave Rittich. That's I think it's serviceable. It shouldn't be too much of a downgrade from Varley. But yeah, this is just such a limbo team.
Yeah.
Drouin, I guess, the biggest kind of ad for them, and that's something to watch for. But he's, we all know what his career's been like, just kind of a lot of moving around and some success here and there, but just hasn't really found a whole lot of consistency. And I don't have a ton of confidence that this is the place he's going to find.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Drouin's going to have to prove that he can have success. Well, he's another guy that needs to show he can play 75, 80 games consistently. He's got a lot of skill. Certainly probably hasn't had the career that most people would have expected to this point, but still young enough that theoretically he could, put it together. I just don't know that, he's going to have to prove that he can put up numbers not playing with McKinnon. But if he's playing with Barzal, I mean, that's pretty good too. That's I think they're going to need some young guy, like they're going to need Shabanov, who's the kid, and he's on the small side. I want to say 5'9", 170-ish, somewhere in there. It's going to be it may be an adjustment for him to get used to the pace and the physicality of the game over here, but we'll see. And then like I said, the rest of their team, Peugeot, Palmieri, Anders Lee, some of those guys are getting a little long in the tooth, I think. And I don't know, Holmstrom looks like a good young player coming up. But I don't know that their forward prospects are as, I don't see a lot there that's going to help them this year. So I'm not real bullish on them this year. And I don't know, like Patrick Roy has never moved the needle that much for me as a head coach. I think they're on the right track with what they're doing in their front office philosophically and everything. I think Mathieu Darche is going to be fine in that gig, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them move on from Roy behind the bench at some point, especially if things go sideways early this season.
A guy like Matt Barzal has kind of come under some scrutiny, both from NHL fans and just from Islanders fans in the last couple of years. People have highlighted, like you mentioned, health situations, lack of point production. A lot of people, maybe even some people on this podcast, would say goal scoring. Just your opinions on what he needs to do to have a solid year.
I think health would be one thing. I think also having some quality wingers on his line would be another thing. So it remains to be seen who he's going to be playing with. I haven't paid much attention to them. I will be soon because they're on the Caps early season schedule, first road game actually. So that's only about 10 days away, I guess now. Yeah, I don't know. Barzal definitely looked a little disinterested at times last year, and obviously there was some stuff going on there. I think you know Lou Lamoriello is an NHL legend and a really good guy, but he definitely has an old school part to him that he could never really let go of, as far as facial hair and suits
Yeah,
and
we'll have
ties for the
beards
media
beards
guy.
on the Islanders for the first time this year, potentially.
Yeah, even stubble
Right.
was
Frowned
not
upon.
permitted. So yeah, it's
Palmieri's going, thank God, dude. I was tired of shaving between periods.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
right.
No kidding, right? He's pretty swarthy for sure. Um, yeah, he's probably the happiest guy on that team, just because of his 5 o'clock shadow problem. But yeah, I don't think they have enough to get in the playoffs. It's gonna be fun to watch Schaefer develop. 18-year-old defenseman in the NHL. They don't come along very frequently. Ekblad, Chikrin. There's not a ton that like wind up playing a lot. They come around every few years, and some of them flame out. Some of them go on to have, good solid careers. Guys like I think Bomeister was maybe one of those guys, maybe a long time ago. I don't remember. Jovanovski. Um, but some of them flourish too. So be interesting to see. He seems like a really good kid. Anxious to watch him play. Excited to see him play for sure.
I think I have these guys just on the outside again. I totally agree with what you said about their defense. They could boring their way into the playoffs, but I think just where everyone else in this division has gotten better up front, they maybe didn't match that. So I'm going to say just on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I have them as a non-playoff team.
Let's go ahead into the heart of Manhattan and talk about the New York Rangers. So, uncharacteristic season for them last year. I think everyone in the world is expecting a full-blown bounce back for them this year. These guys have kind of been one of the 3 or 4 teams over the last couple seasons where I've said, it's time to do something. I'm glad they haven't, but I think they're kind of, they're in do it now mode, like the Dallas Stars or the Edmonton Oilers or the Carolina Hurricanes. So, what do you think it's going to take for these guys this season to get it over the line?
Probably. I mean, they've really changed the face of this team, moving Trouba and Kreider and Miller and getting JT Miller. Um, it's kind of hard to know what to make of them. I think they need a bounce back from Zibanejad, who still had 60 points last year in a down year. So it wasn't like he was, not productive or just terrible. He just wasn't at the level and so they can't really afford, I don't think, for him to keep dipping. Trocheck's excellent, I think, a terrific two-way guy that I think every team would want to have. Cooley looks like a good up and coming player. What they might need is a kid like Gabe Perreault to come along quicker than expected. And then I think their defense. I don't know what to make of it, because they've had so much in and out, and they apparently liked they get Will Borgen in the deal for Kakko from Seattle and like him enough to sign him and plug him in, and they trade Ryan Lindgren and they trade um, Trouba and Miller, and they still have Fox. I'm what they've got is Shesterkin, and that, again, kind of like the Islanders, they don't necessarily need a lot to get in as long as Shesterkin stays healthy, is able to play 50, 55 games and have a good season. So that's a lot of ifs. And so that's why I kind of have them at the, I mean, for me, Columbus or them could be the, if there are 4 teams from the Metro getting in, I think it's one of those two.
My thing with the Rangers, and I've said it on this show before, but I think that they hit the panic button so prematurely last year, and they blew a lot of shit up that I don't think they necessarily needed to. And I think that what you're looking at this year, I don't know if I'd say it's a all in all a worse team on paper than it was at the start of last year, but I think their defense got worse for sure. I think they'll definitely miss Keandre Miller and Trouba. I think, Borgen and Susie and, Vakanainen, those guys are all fine, but nothing that exciting to me. Gavrikov, I think that's a good move. Having him and Fox is really good, but I just think that they didn't need to put themselves in this situation. I think it's kind of it's almost like Yankee fans. I was texting my cousin, he's a big Yankee fan, yesterday, that, Volpe hits that home run and he's such a hated guy for that team for kind of no reason. And I was texting my cousin, he said, well, we're hard on everybody. And I was like, yeah, well, that's maybe part of the problem. So I think part of it is that
Toronto
the fan
South
base is so quick. Yeah, they're so quick to make judgments, and I wonder how much like the front office feels the pressure from that and feels like, holy shit, we got to do something. And then all of a sudden you're moving Kreider and you're moving Trouba and Keandre and all these guys. And it's like, well, now look at this on paper. And can you tell me this is a better team on paper than it was going into last year? I'm not sure. But that being said, I do think that they'll probably perform better just because I can't imagine them doing what they did last year. I do think they'll probably sneak in, but it's just an odd team, an odd situation.
I mean, what do you think the Sullivan situation does for these guys? That has to be the biggest change, is behind the bench, right?
That too. Yeah, that helps a lot.
And I think for my money, he's one of, if not he's a top 3-4 coach in the NHL. I thought he was decent in Boston, before I worked with him or knew him or anything. And then 2007, he got fired from Boston, I thought unjustly. And then in 2007, he coached Team USA at the IIHF World Championships in Moscow. And I was there covering that tournament and that team. And, just spending a couple of weeks there with him, I said to myself, this guy's getting another job in the end. He should, and it should happen pretty quick. And it didn't. It was almost 10 years before. It was 7-8 years before he was back behind an NHL bench, and that was in Pittsburgh. And the Caps were the first team that the Penguins faced under Sullivan. And I remember listening to him at that morning skate talking, and I'm like, this is not going to go. This is not going to go well for fans of the rival teams of the Penguins. And sure enough, that's how it went. I think he's an excellent coach, really good human being, and I think that there's going to be they're going to get a Sullivan bump from replacing Peter Laviolette with this guy. He's just a really good coach. He knows the game, knows how to push buttons, knows how he wants his guys to play. I think that the key there is going to be kind of what you said, Mac. Like, these guys don't have a lot of patience. I'm talking about the guys upstairs, the Drurys and them push the pen. That not just after winning the President's Trophy and then taking that team and kind of changing it in, like you said, 12 months time, but you can go back to the pandemic season, the 56 game season, where the whole Tom Wilson, Artemi Panarin thing erupted, and you had the bench clearing brawl and everything, and they put out the statement about what they were going to do, and
Horrifying
heads
acts of
rolled,
violence.
and so I think also they've got an overactive ownership there too, and that doesn't do anybody any favors in any NHL market. So they've got some hurdles to overcome, but I think they definitely have the right guy on the bench, and I think he has a way of getting the most out of players. To me, the key there for success is kind of what we were talking about with Carolina earlier. If management is able to get Sullivan the kind of players that he wants to play the way he wants to play, good mobile puck moving defensemen, some skilled forwards, some good grit and sandpaper down in the bottom six. They'll just keep spinning their wheels and turning things over every 2 or 3 years. But if they let him coach and they give him the horses, I don't see any reason why they couldn't be back amongst the elite fairly quickly.
Yeah, and speaking of bottom six, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Capitals legend Taylor Radish is now part of this team.
And honestly, I think he had a 20 goal season in Chicago a couple of years ago, and just a really low shooting percentage the last couple of years. So snake bitten a little bit, better player than what we saw. I think numbers wise, I won't say he's a better player because I think he had a good year and played well on that line. And the line that he played on last year, he was getting. You guys know this. The Dowd line it starts eternally in the defensive zone, so it's really hard to put up numbers on that line. I thought he did a decent job at doing that. 27 points playing on the fourth line. When your deployment is somewhere in the 30 to 35% range, or lower even in the D zone, that's a good achievement. So I think he'll play a little higher in that lineup this year, and I think there's upside there offensively. Whether he can reach it or not, we'll see. But he did have a 20-goal season in Chicago, and I think there's some untapped offensive ability there.
Do we think these guys bounce back and get into the playoffs this year? I think I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I really can't see them missing 2 years in a row, especially with Sullivan now.
I got them in too, and that's again, I'm counting on there being a 4-4 split between the Atlantic and the Metro this year.
We each picked 4 in the we each picked 4 yeses in the Atlantic episode, so we're kind of married to picking 4.
I'm curious, who'd you pick? Who do you have in from the Atlantic?
Nick, I think we picked the same ones, didn't we?
I think we were the same.
Who was it though? It was
because it was 48 hours ago, but of course we can't remember.
Probably Toronto, Florida,
Tampa, and
Montreal. I had.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
I think Ottawa gets in.
This is a team. Ooh, that's spicy.
I
like it.
I like it though.
Mac, before we move on, I think you have a word from our friends over at DraftKings, who are the proud sponsor of this episode.
Yes, I sure do. Football is back, and so is your shot at big wins with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's the play. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats from breakout rookies to elite QBs and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the better your payout. And here's the kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN. Play just $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call. Ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded is non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Let's go to Philly. These guys 2 seasons ago, they come down to last game, last period, and somehow still find a way to mess it up. But obviously, ton of changes in the offseason. You've got the Michkov effect. Does Philly find a way back into the postseason, or is it going to be same as it ever was for the Flyers?
Yeah, I don't see it. I think they're, the coaching change was probably wise. If you're going to have a young team, I'm a Tortorella fan actually, but I think he does need a team that's a little more schooled, a little older, a little more experienced. I don't think he's the best guy for young players, though I do think if you're a young player and you're not intimidated by him, you can pick up a lot. That said, Tocchet, I think, is one of those coaches that's capable of giving a first-year bump as well. I think that, for me, the best thing they did in the offseason was getting Dan Vladar to improve the goaltending, because that was a wreck.
Yeah. And you're saying something if you're saying something about the goaltending situation.
Yeah.
If you're saying that
Shows you how
Dan
low the bar
Vladar
was.
is like a big upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah, because
exactly.
I mean, it's not like he's. I don't even know if he's ever played half a season's worth of games. But they needed something better than what they had there last year, because it wasn't close to being good enough most nights. And up front, Michkov's legit. He's going to be one of the best players in the league for a long time. But they got to find someone to play with him too. The middle of the ice up there is a big problem right now. I'm going to be interested to see how they deploy Zegras, if they try to maybe make a center out of him. And if that takes, and he can play with Michkov, that might give them a quick lift, a quicker lift than. But they do have some good prospects coming, I think. I didn't mind some of the other stuff they did in the offseason, like Dvorak. Obviously, that's a real high price tag, but it's a guy you can move on from at the deadline. They can fit him under the cap. It's not a big deal. It's 1 year. So, and you know what? He might, if Zegras isn't in the middle, they might be running like Couturier, Dvorak 1-2 down the middle. So they might need him in their top 6 even. I just think they're a little thin in the middle of the ice there, and they're looking to replace Scott Lawton there too in their bottom 6. I guess Noah Cates probably takes on a larger role, and he's a good player. But I think they're a couple of years away, or at least for sure at least a year away. But I do think they made some wise low risk, probably minor reward moves in the offseason that should at least move them up. But I don't know, is that what you want there? Is it maybe better to not be so good with Gavin McKenna sitting there in the draft next year? The thing is, Philly fans don't abide a tear down, so that's probably not going to happen. I don't think it's happened in my lifetime. I mean, the Flyers have been terrible a couple of times in my lifetime, but it wasn't on purpose. I don't think they've ever torn down and built on purpose from the bottom. And when they've been down, they haven't stayed down for long, typically. I think this may be one of their most extended fallow stretches in franchise history right now, these last handful of seasons.
Yeah, I do think I love having like Delorier and Hathaway as like your bottom 4 wingers. That's just Flyers hockey.
Yeah, I got all day for Hathaway. He's a really good player.
Yeah,
good dude too.
And that's the brand of hockey that we're used to seeing from this franchise, like it or hate it, over the last decade plus. I think I'm going to call a spade a spade. I think the decor is one of the worst in the league through and through. It's just there's not a lot of upside there for me. Drysdale, obviously good player, but it's not deep enough for me. And the goaltending obviously is still one of the worst in the league. And so I think those two things alone just are not going to be enough to bring this team into the playoffs, or not this year anyway.
I like Sanheim and York in the back there. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, Ristolainen's been better there than he was in Buffalo. Again, we're talking about a probably low bar, but
he's hurt too. Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah, and I don't, beyond that, they're going to have to develop some guys beyond that. So yeah, I think they're definitely a couple pieces away back there, but I think their top pair is pretty solid.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I echo what you guys said about the Dvorak move. That kind of strikes me as just like another Flyers hockey, prototypical player. I think what they've got coming in the next couple of years, especially with a guy like Porter Martone, who's going to be playing at Michigan State this year, that's going to be a really, really big ad for them. I hate that because he seems like another guy that's just such a Philadelphia Flyer already, even though he's not in the NHL. Yeah, I don't think these guys are getting into the playoffs. I think, like you guys said, they're maybe multiple years away, but I think the future's bright, and I anticipate that talk is going to have a pretty big effect on this team. Let's go ahead and move on to everyone's favorite team, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, new coach for these guys, Dan Muse, now behind the bench. What do we think that's going to do for the Penguins, who have, let's be real, struggled pretty significantly the past couple of seasons?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know I have no idea what to expect in Pittsburgh. I mean, they could surprise. I mean, Crosby's still there, Malkin's still there, Letang's still there. They added Anthony Mantha, some other pieces. I don't think they will. I don't think their goaltending's good enough. I think their defense is maybe worse than Philly's. I wonder what happens with Crosby. I wonder. Like, I honestly think that the best thing they could do would be to tear it down and try to position themselves for McKenna next year. But I don't know if they'll do. It's hard to get a read on them, and it's hard to know if Sid's intent on staying. But to me, the guy has earned the right to do whatever he wants. If he wants to be traded, if he wants to go somewhere and win, he's earned the right to do that. If he wants to be one of those guys that plays his whole career in the same sweater, he's earned the right to do that too. Great ambassador for the game, amazing human. Can't say enough good things about him, but they don't have much beyond that. And he's still incredibly effective night in and night out at everything he does. But yeah, I think a lot hinges on what he decides in the weeks and months ahead. But yeah, I don't think this team has a high upside in terms of how many points they're going to get. So I think they're probably, out of the 8 teams in the Metro, they're the easiest one to say, I don't see them getting in. Not to say that they couldn't. I just think the odds are really low for these guys because there's just not a lot to hang your hat on. Not from the net out. Their forward group still has some pieces with Malcolm, Raquel, Crosby. But again, they could move all those guys before the Olympic break too, theoretically.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the D is worse than Philly. The goaltending, I mean, they get Shilovs, who has some potential. They get him from Vancouver, but I don't know that he's necessarily going to be the answer there. The forward group it's pretty tough in my opinion. I think I love Anthony Mantha, but I think when you're able to make an argument that he might be the 4th or 5th best forward on this team, that's not necessarily a encouraging thing. And that's not a knock on him, but it's just, he should be a third line guy, and he's probably going to be playing second line minutes here. So, not a lot to say about them. I think, I am a Penguins hater. Obviously, everyone knows that, but I think I'm being realistic when I say that of all, this is our last division preview episode. Almost every team that I have said isn't going to make the playoffs, there's at least a part of me that's like, there's a world where they do.
Yeah.
This is the team I am most confident in not making the playoffs in the entire league.
Oh,
sorry,
boy.
Harry. I'm sorry,
Here we
Harry. I
go.
had to say it. I had to say it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, McGroarty, it'll be interesting to see what he does. I know he's a little bit banged up right now. Same for Hayes, but yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat where I don't really have high hopes. Mike, totally agree with everything you said about Sid. He has earned basically, if he decides he wants to own the team tomorrow, they should just give it to him anyways. But let me ask you this. What would have to happen, or how bad would it have to get there for him to say, okay, I want to leave? Because it kind of seemed like he said, like, I really want to stay. I'm happy here. And I don't know if he's just doing that to be Sidney Crosby, or, what do you think is going to happen there? Do you think he stays, or do you think it gets so bad that he could walk at some point?
Yeah, I think it could get to the point where he wants to, it's a tough way to end. It's a tough way to end your career. But again, I get the attachment to the city and to the area and to the fans and all that. And the Pittsburgh organization, again, you can hate on the team and all that and the fans and everything. The Pittsburgh organization is pretty good. They've got good people there.
Yeah.
There's, they definitely take a beating from Caps fans, and it goes two ways, right? It goes back and forth. Yeah. But honestly, they're a well-run organization with a lot of really awesome people working there. I know, Lars Eller, when he came back to Washington last year after a couple of years, I had nothing but the best things to say. Everyone I've ever talked to who's played there, same thing. The people I know who work there are awesome. So, maybe that's enough. And the fact that he has 3 cups, maybe that's enough. He's going to be playing in the Olympics this year. Maybe that's enough. But who knows? He does keep his thoughts fairly close to the vest, and I think that's a good thing too. So yeah, I think they would need probably to come out of the gates a little stronger than expected. Have a decent enough start, maybe a little bit of a tease that sort of, maybe Malkin has a little sip from the fountain of youth and has a little good 20-game spurt. Letang's, I don't know what. But they otherwise, man, they could, if they execute a fire sale, they've definitely got some pieces there. So, between Carlson and Raquel, Sid, a couple of the other ones, I don't think they'd get a lot for, guys like Malkin and Letang just because of their age and whatnot. But there are some people there that teams would be knocking on the door for sure.
I almost wonder, I agree with you, like maybe this and that are enough, but I almost wonder if the Olympics thing could have the opposite effect. Like if the Penguins are just down in the basement and we get to the Olympics and he starts playing high stakes hockey for Team Canada and he feels that rush and that competitiveness again, and then he gets back from the Olympic break and all of a sudden it's like, oh, holy shit, I have to go back to playing like
that's a great point.
Bottom of the league NHL stuff again. Like I wonder if he gets a little taste of that. I just saw a video today of him talking about his workout room at home, how he's got pictures of like every Stanley Cup winning captain lifting the cup like all over the walls of his workout room, and then he's got one picture frame that he just keeps empty all the time because he's like, that could be another one of me up there or whatever. This is a competitive guy, and it's not somebody, sure, he's got 3 cups or whatever, but it's never enough. Any NHL player you ask, you can win 10 cups, you're always going to want one more.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's me putting on my tinfoil hat.
That's an excellent point, Mac, for sure. I think you're spot on, and that fits with his makeup from what I know of it too.
What's his contract off the top of my head? What's he got left? I forget.
Quick here. Let's see. I think he's got
still like the team friendly.
He's got
8.7 million.
Right. Yeah. Very team friendly, and
because he's got the whole numbers thing that he's all
exactly. I think, Mac, that's a great point, especially like when he comes back from the Olympic break and goes, oh crap, the Canadians and the Avs are both going to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. I could be on either one of those teams.
It's this year and next year, and that's it. So he's got one more after this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting for sure.
Yeah. I think we can all agree. I don't want to speak for everyone, but not playoff team.
Not a playoff team, but we can look forward to him coming. If he does get traded, we can look forward to him coming back and playing a period in an exhibition game in a Penguins uniform in a season to be named later, a la Marc-Andre.
Yeah,
right.
The MAF special. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Should we do it?
It's time. The Washington Capitals. So a ton has gone on with this franchise. Obviously, I think surprised a lot of people last year by just coming out and outright winning this division, winning this conference in the middle of the Ovechkin pursuit of Wayne Gretzky. That has all since, gone by the wayside. He now sits at 897, I believe. He's 3 away from 900. Just first impressions of what to expect with this team going into this year. I know there's obviously been a lot going on, but just the vibe you're picking up with boots on the ground every day.
Well, 20-point improvement last year. There's definitely not going to be a 20-point improvement this year. Like there's not that much upside. I don't think they have to have 111 points again to get in, but I think they're capable of replicating or coming close to replicating, but I think it'll take a lot too, because it took a lot last year. You look up and down that lineup and almost every guy had a career year, but it's a great mix of guys too. It's a bunch of guys who really love coming to work, working together, playing together. They love goofing around together. They love hanging out away from the rink. It's one of the closest groups I've ever seen in Washington over the last 30 years. And I think that had a lot to do with it. I also think they got the right guy for Coach of the Year. Spencer Carberry was great at pushing buttons, motivating guys, and that's star players, and that's up and coming young players. I think he has a way of reaching everyone on that team and having a positive impact on them. So for me, I think it's expect regression and try to limit it. Because, but on the other hand, too, there's only a couple of these guys that have passed 30, right? We know Carlson and Ovechkin. Tom Wilson's in his early 30s now. There's only a few of them. They have done it quietly and sort of gradually over the last 3 years, have done a decent job of turning back the clock. And it started when the wheels sort of came off, was it 2 seasons ago? I think it was 23-24, Laviolette's last season, when Carlson took the puck to the ear. And the last half of that season, they never once were able to string together 3 straight wins. Missed the playoffs, grab Ryan Leonard, grab Andrew Crystal in the draft, hire Spencer Carberry, really minor things. And then that summer, they added what? At Joel Edmondson and Max Pacioretty. So you're like, this could be rough for a little while. And it was at the beginning of the season. I mean, they couldn't score to save their lives, but they defended okay. They were getting decent goaltending. And then, man, they just turned on the Jets the last third, I would say, of that season. Remember, Ovi had like 8 goals in 43 games, came back from the All-Star break, was terrific. And then they also got,
after riding the camels.
Yeah, right, exactly. But then also they wrote Ovi, Carly, Dylan Strome, and Charlie Lindgren to Osh gets that goal in Philadelphia, and they sneak into the playoffs. And I think that was a big deal. That and the couple of Calder Cups that their minor league team was able to win in those 2 years. That kind of really, I will say it elevated the feeling around the organization. It sort of felt like some fresh air coming in, and that, maybe this isn't going to be disastrous after Ovi leaves or after Ovi retires. And then what they did last summer with adding 7 pieces, and then essentially all 7 of those pieces working out pretty well, and then you wind up re-signing. I mean, so you look at what they did over the summer last year. So Dubois, Chikrin, Logan Thompson are now all on board for long periods of time. Matt Roy too. So there's 4 significant pieces. There's a, top 6 center. There's a, 45, 50 start goaltender and 2 top 4 defensemen. And you're able to bring those guys into your organization all in the careers. So I think they've really kind of put a quick new paint job on everything. But they need, and the guys, like I was saying, the guys that had big years last year are still at ages where, and they still have the fires that burn within. That's for sure. For Dubois and Dylan Strome, those guys are always trying to get better and improve in every little thing that they do. So I could definitely see those guys still having some upside to their games. I think Dubois is going to be killing penalties a little bit this year too. Connor McMichael moving to the middle of the ice. I think the way that Connor McMichael and Alexei Protas broke out last year are, also fueled that rise that we saw from the Caps last year. And so, do you need Alexei Protas to score 30 goals this year? Probably not. But you want to keep him up at the level, and maybe he gets some power play time too, right? This is a guy who scored. I think there's like 4 guys in the last 50 years that have scored as many goals, that have scored 30 goals in the league without getting one on the power play, and Pro is one of them. So maybe Doobie gets some PK time this year. Protas gets some power play time, and we see how that affects their numbers. Can you keep Connor McMichael's counting numbers up there if he was getting second line left wing minutes last year and he's going to be getting third line center minutes this year? Well, if he's on the power play, you probably can. If he's on the first power play, but maybe I expect to see we'll see him on the left side sometimes as well, because I'm also a believer in Hendrix Laviere and his ability to bounce back from a tough season last year. So I think right now they're a really deep team on paper, but ask me again in a week after waivers and the opening night roster and all that. It's going to be hard for them to hold on to the really good players that they have in their system. What I do like is that not only have they changed the face of what they are at the varsity NHL level, and they've turned back the clock and made this a younger team, a better team. They've really got some good young players coming. They've got as many as 11 guys starting their pro career this year, which is it's probably the largest first-year class I've ever seen. The last time they had a class this large was 2015-16, and that was like Jake Vrana, Riley Barber, Garrett Pilon, I think, guys like that. The only first rounder of the bunch was Vrana, and that team got to the Calder Cup final against Zach Werenski and Sonny Milano's Lake Erie Monsters, and were swept in 4 games, but they knocked out the Marlies on the way, and the Marlies had I think they had Nylander and maybe Marner, and those they were formidable, and that was a big upset when the Bears knocked them out in 5. So they've got the relationship between Hershey and Washington is strong. I'm interested to see how a lot of those young guys develop, but what the Caps still lack is what Ehlers brings. That skill, that game breaking, what Ovechkin was 10, 12 years ago, right? The speed, the skill, the dynamism, the ooh, the ah, the up out of your seat when he has the puck. That's what. But look, every team in the league is looking for guys like that. There aren't 30 of them to go around, and that's why Kaprizov got paid, right? So sometimes you have to draft that guy, because trading for that guy is really hard. And it's not like Ehlers is that guy, certainly not to the degree of like a Michkov or some of these other guys that we've been talking about. He's a really good player. He's got a good track record. He's also got some injury history. So I don't know that he would have been the answer. What I think is that the Caps are pretty strong up front. I don't think you can beat their blue line. There may be some groups of 6 that are comparable, but 1 through 6 for me, that's the best defense in the NHL still, because I don't think there's a third pair guy among them. I think all of those guys are capable of playing higher in the lineup. I mean, if the third pair is Chychrun and Van Riemsdyk, that's pretty good. And you got Declan Chisholm as your 7, and you still have McElrath and Iorio, and you got Chesley and some other ones, Mugli coming up through the system. That seems to be in good shape for now. You've got goaltending settled for the next 3 years. Those guys are both signed. I think there's a window here in which they could do something, but I think without like some elite talent in your forward group, it's a little tougher. But what helps is the fact that those 6 guys in the back can push the play too. So if your forwards are just good, really good, and not maybe superstar or elite as a group, the fact that the D is spending less time in their own end, and the fact that you're spending more time in the offensive zone allows you to be, I think, a little more efficient at what you do. And so I could see a world in which they, maybe push past the second round, one of these next couple of years, I think. But can they win the cup? That's a bigger question. And I don't think you can expect Ovi to score 44 goals again this year, especially, I mean, what did he miss? 17, 18 games last year. But I'm anxious to see what he can do. And I loved watching John Carlson make his preseason debut last night, because it looked like he looked like, to me, he looked like he was in midseason form. He just played a casual 24 minutes, including like the last two plus minutes, I think he played 9 minutes in the third period last night too. So I don't think there's holes on this team, but there's certainly some guys that are going to need to prove that last year wasn't a fluke. I can do this again. I can do this for a couple more years. I can do this for 5 more years, because they do have guys that are at the age that they should be able to expect that production for a number of years. And then maybe in that period of time, the cap's going up, some high salary players could be coming off the books. We'll see whether any of these supposed UFAs, next year's class looks like it could be amazing. I think it's not going to be.
Yeah.
I think most of these teams are going to wise up and sign their own guys. I think McDavid will wind up in Edmonton, and I think Kaprizov stays in Minnesota. I don't think a lot of these guys are going to make it to market, because the cap's going up really fast. But I think teams are going to realize that the smartest way to spend that money isn't going to be going big game hunting for guys who are in their early 30s and are free agents and had great years for someone else. It's going to be paying the guys that you have in your own system that have had a couple of good years and are now looking for that, that 5-6 year, that second contract or that third contract in a league, and they've earned, to get paid.
Yeah, I think my biggest question marks, you kind of hit on some of them, but I'm really excited to see, can McMichael solidify himself as a center, as a 3C? If not, will we be able to finally slot a guy like LaPierre in? He's had a good camp and preseason so far, so that's promising. Excited to see, hopefully, Miro is part of this team as well. Excited to see what him and Leonard can do. And then the other thing too, like Beauvillier, I love what he did for us in the playoffs. He was obviously one of our best players in the playoffs. And we didn't do as much as probably Caps fans wanted us to in the offseason, but I'm excited for a guy like Justin Sourdif. I think his highlights, if you've watched some of his clips over the last couple of years. He's got a lot of skill, and I'm excited to see what his role might be on the team too.
I think he's gonna take Radish's spot on the fourth line there to start. He'll play with Dewey and Nick Dowd. But yeah, I agree. I think 1 through 12, 13, 14 up front, they're really strong. And again, my worry is that they may lose some of this depth between now and 5 o'clock Monday when the rosters have to be submitted.
That's going to be tough.
What do you think about a guy like Miro? It's sort of been up and down the last couple of years. What are you looking for from him?
Yeah, I think the way it's been running so far, it looks like that third line is going to be what we saw in Columbus last night, which was Miro with Mikey and Tom Wilson. And I think that's putting Miro in a position to have some success. And I thought they
kind of a clownish hit from Goodbranson last night too.
I agree. So it's good to see Tom stand up for him. But honestly, Tom's goal happens less than a half minute before that, and I think Miro deserves some credit for he puts the forechecking pressure on the other side that makes Fabro cough it up to Tom. I mean, he doesn't get an assist or anything for that, but I think he's played well. I think he's looked really good to me in the preseason, the games that he's played. I think he's going to make the team, and I think he's going to, I think he's capable of scoring more than 20 goals in the NHL. Whether it happens this year or takes a little time remains to be seen. And honestly, I have all faith in the world of the other two guys on that line. I think Connor McMichael is a driven hockey player. I think he'll be successful whether he's 3C or 2L. And I still think Tom Wilson is a formidable player, and I think he's motivated this season, not just at the NHL level, but I think he wants to get off to a good start because I think that being in the conversation for the Canadian Olympic team really means a lot to him, and I think we'd all love to see him land a berth on that roster.
Definitely, we just don't want him to take home any gold medals or anything. A guy like Ryan Leonard, we're getting a full season of Leno this year. I think Caps fans have all been really excited about that over the summer, myself included. So we got some glimpses of it, in the last 10 games of last year, a little bit in the playoffs. But, from what you've seen so far in the preseason and just being around the rink, what do you think the upside is for Ryan Leonard this year?
Yeah, again, I think he's another guy who could score 20, and maybe it happens this year, maybe it doesn't. But again, I like the position that they're putting him in. They're playing him on a line with Dubois and Alexei Protas, and I think that's putting him in a position to succeed. So I like, it's hard when you're a young player and they just throw you on the fourth line and say, "Here, go," and you're playing with a couple of meatheads or whatever. And the Caps don't have meatheads, right? They don't have they have legitimate hockey players, really 1 through 14 on their forward depth chart right now, and even deeper than 14 to be honest. They're going to have some really good players, I think, in Hershey, and not just the up and coming guys too. Sheldon Rempel's had a nice camp. Graham Clark played well in New Jersey the other day. They've got the veterans that they've signed to sort of help those kids as they push their way up the system. Those are good players too. I think Derek King, first year coach there, is going to be a good mentor to younger players. But kudos to Todd Nelson for the last 3 years there, because Nelly's a really good coach and he deserves to have the gig back in Pittsburgh too. So you got to marvel though at the Caps are producing players and they're producing coaches too, right? Guys are they lost their Hershey video coach, got hired by Seattle, so they've had I think their last 2, maybe 3 video coaches went to the NHL. They have assistants. Obviously, Carberry ascended to the NHL from there. Scotty Allen coached in Hershey. He's in the NHL. Patrick Weller for now in the NHL too. So they've not just developed players. Hershey's done a really good job of developing coaches trainers, video guys. That it's honestly run like an NHL organization in an AHL town. So it's a real fortunate thing, I think, for the Caps to have.
What do we think about this? Is my last thing that I'll say on the Caps. I think a lot of fans, myself included, are curious, especially with what we've seen so far in the preseason, to find out if and how a guy like Sonny Milano finds his way back into this lineup, because I think a lot of people after last season just kind of forgot about him, written him off, and he showed some signs of being back and ready to play again this year. So do you think he finds a way back into this lineup? And if so, where do you fit him?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer too. The where do you fit him in, especially where do you fit Ethan Frank in? Where do you fit LaPierre in? 2 more games, and I think that those games may matter to answer those questions. Also, you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but things happen there too. Yeah, I mean, I remember you guys asking me last year, breakout players, and I think I said Sonny Milano because he finished that 23-24 season. So I mentioned Lindgren, obviously, and then Ovi, Carly, and Strome were the 1, 2, 3 scores, but 4 and 5, and then we're talking about the last third of the season, that push that got the Caps into the playoffs. The next highest scores after that top trio of Ovi, Strome, and Carlson were LaPierre and Sonny Milano, and they were playing on the same line with the guy who retired yesterday, Max Pacioretty, and they honestly did have chemistry, LaPierre and Milano. And look, Sonny is one of the most skilled guys with the puck, with his stick, with his hand-eye coordination. I mean, he's up there with guys like TJ Oshie as far as that element of his game. He doesn't bring the physicality, or some of the other things, but I mean, he's good at entering on the power play. He can play on the power play. He'll go to the net on the power play. Yeah, I don't know. The hard part about this is, let's say you don't have space for him, and I think he's 29 now. So maybe you'd rather give that spot to a younger player, and there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe you can find a place for Sonny somewhere else in the league, get a pick for him. You would think that, especially given his showing in the preseason and his body of work, when he's been healthy, and that's another thing, right? You look at his career, there's not a lot of 75, 80 games. It's hard to put together a consistent NHL resume if you're not playing season in, season out, 70, 75 games. And that's the thing that's been missing from him so far. But maybe some team. So that's the thing. If you're the Caps, and do you plug? How much faith do you have of him playing 75 games and being able to produce at that level? I think that's the hard part. That's what you have to answer. And do you have a better chance of getting that from him or from Miroshnichenko? And there's not a vast difference in the salary there. It's especially with the Caps are actually going to have cap space this year. A lot of teams are going to have cap space more than probably the last several years. But I just wonder. I don't. This is the thing. I think about this every year at this time. Like, there's so many guys around that you're like, man, I don't know. I don't think that guy's going to clear waivers. And then, he gets picked up, but you wonder, well, they couldn't have been the only team that was interested. Can you find someone lower than them, or, maybe get a pick, pull a pick, but you just don't see it happen. I think teams just they're like, I'm not going to give up an asset. We'll take this guy, but I'm not going to give up an asset to get him. And they just say, we'll roll the dice. We'll claim him if we can. If we get him, we get him. If we don't, we don't. But you look at this time of year, you would think there'd be a little bit of a game of musical chairs. Okay, we'll give you a 6th rounder for this guy if you can't keep him, because we'd love to have him. We'll give him a look. It typically doesn't. It just typically doesn't work that way. You never see a lot of trades at this time of year anymore. It didn't used to be that way. Pre-salary cap, you'd see more trades. And I thought this year given the depth of some teams and given the extra cap space, maybe things would loosen up a little bit. But really, I don't think. I mean, there was a minor deal the other day, but it was minor. I can't remember who it was, what it was. I just don't think. And maybe we'll see something between now and Sunday or Monday, but honestly, it doesn't seem like it to me.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Playoff team.
Yeah, I think they make it. I think there's enough fire in the belly of those 23 guys that they'll get back. And like I said, I don't know that they'll get 111 points again. I wouldn't bet against them doing that. But I think 100 to 111 is certainly doable, and I see them getting in.
Yep, I go playoff team. Nick, you too?
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
So now comes the hard question: who's your Metro Division winner?
For me, I think it's Carolina. I think they probably should have won it the last couple of years. They just started slow both of those years, and the Rangers were a juggernaut one year, and the Caps were a juggernaut the next. But I still think on paper they're the best team in the division, and so you go with that's where you put your sawbucks.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I was looking at that lineup earlier. I was like, I don't know if there's anyone on paper that got this much better in the offseason, so I got to go with the Hurricanes. I hope I'm wrong. Usually am, so that's good.
Yeah, I'd be okay with being wrong about that.
Gonna agree. I wish I could say something more exciting, but yeah, that's my pick as well. I will say the only thing, we mentioned it before, but if for some reason they have another catastrophic health situation in between the pipes, then maybe it ends up being somebody else. But yeah, you can't count on that. So that's my pick as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up the Metro Division. Guys, do you have anything else before we close out here?
That'll do it for me.
Just can't wait for it to get going again. It's the best time of year.
Amen. Well, Mike, we always appreciate you stopping by, guys. Make sure you're liked and subscribed on YouTube. We're going to be posting a bunch of cool stuff there, TikTok as well, and we will catch you in the next episode.